Hello and welcome to another planning appeal case study video. I'm John Peters, and in this video I'm going to explain how we overcame a recent refusal by Lambeth Council for one of our clients. This planning appeal was to overcome the refusal for a single-storey rear and side extension that was refused by the local authority Lambeth Council Planning Department. Our client was initially booked in for a free, no obligation consultation to run through the refusal reasons that had been used by Lambeth Council and to evaluate if an appeal was viable or if an alternative option would be best suited. The free, no obligation consultation, which took around 15 minutes, found that this case was viable for appeal to the Planning Inspectorate, taking the decision process away from Lambeth Council Planning Department. This case was refused by Lambeth Council for the following reasons. The single-storey ground floor rear extension, by reason of its scale, bulk and mass, would constitute an incongruous and over-dominant form of development that would adversely impact the architectural integrity of the host property and the semi-detached pair which it forms a part of would fail to appear subordinate. As such, the proposal is considered contrary to policies. The planning inspector in this case identified the main reasons for this case were the effect of the proposal upon the character and appearance of the host dwelling and the wider area. Many of you who have similar refusals are repeatedly stating to us that you had little or no correspondence throughout the application process with the council, and the first thing that you actually knew was receiving a refusal notice from the council, in some cases when you received the letter from ourselves. We completely understand that the Planning Inspectorate can be very frustrating, with costs involved, the time it takes and so on. But do remember, we deal with this on a daily basis for others just like yourselves. With planning appeals, experience really matters. Our specialist team, who handles over 2.5% of all planning appeals in England and Wales that are currently produced and submitted, start by producing a comprehensive and robust appeal statement that in this specific case covers 35 pages and was just over 6,800 words. It's important to detail in the appeal statement where the local authority failed in their assessment of the case and how and where possible both local and national policy applies in favour of the appeal. Additionally, if possible, bringing in similar cases that the Planning Inspectorate found in favour of at appeal. Obviously, with the back catalogue we have of wins, we're able to use these cases and what the inspector said in them as an additional argument to support the case we are working on. Once an appeal statement is completed, we send the document to our client asking them to check that they are happy for us to submit the case. If we need to add any additional information that the client may have forgotten previously to supply, it's done at this point and the case is then submitted. It's vitally important that all the documents and responses are submitted on time throughout the process, as failure to do so will result in an appeal not being successful, something we do hear about often when people attempt an appeal for the first time. Always ensure you use a professional who has considerable experience of appeals. It's worth asking them for some recent successful planning appeal case studies like you'll find on our website. Due to the large number of cases we represent, we have a dedicated team that liaises with the Planning Inspectorate on a daily basis. This Planning Inspector for this appeal stated that it is evident that many semi-detached pairs along this avenue would originally have been symmetrical in form and appearance, including the ones in question. Nevertheless, many have been altered beyond their origins throughout a variety of modifications, including side extensions, roof extensions, window replacements, material changes and the like. As such, many of the local development patterns originally symmetry and repetition of form has been lost, as it's evident within the street scene. The appeal property is a case in point, with a heptagable change, rear dormer window, contemporary replacement windows and painted render and brickwork. The importance of any symmetry within this pair has been lost. Whilst well maintained and visually prominent in the street scene due to the position immediately opposite a junction, the inspector found nothing about the semi-detached pair that makes them particularly distinctive amongst their contemporaries or sensitive to further change. Furthermore, the inspector stated that the council's officer's report states that although the wall height of the extension would measure 2.7 metres to the eaves height, the extension would appear as 1.5 stories from the rear. That would not be the case, the inspector said. Although the addition would be finished with a shallow pitched hip roof and small flat area, its maximum height would be measured at 3.6, with the roof adjoining the dwelling well below the sill height of the rear facing first floor windows. The additional floorscape would be large in comparison to the ground floor space of the original dwelling, but a significant proportion of this would be achieved by extending the dwelling to the side. This element would be set well away from the plot's side common boundary with next door, and would be deeply recessed behind the dwelling's front elevation and largely screened from sight in views from the avenue by the side of the garage. Continuing, the inspector said there is nothing about the development when viewed within the street scene that would make it appear cramped in its setting or visually incongruent. At a depth of 4 metres beyond the dwelling's rear wall, the extension would be residential in scale and form, neither overly deep nor tall. Indeed, its depth would compare favourably with some other permitted single-storey extensions to semi-detached houses in the immediate area along the avenue, as demonstrated in the appeal. For instance, at number 26 on the south side of the road, a 4 metre deep extension was given prior approval by the council in January 22. Planning permission was granted in 2012 for a 3.8 metre deep single-storey conservatory extension at 27, and prior approval was given in 2014 for a 5.5 metre deep extension on the avenue as well. It is evident that similarly deep extensions within the area are not unusual. At single storey with a shallow pitched roof, the height would be appropriately subservient to the 2-storey dwelling, regardless of the existing additions to the property. I find nothing about the proposed extension's form that would appear bulky or overly dominant. Despite the property's unique deep garden, when compared with neighbouring plots, the extension would not erode the reasonably spacious green setting of the wider area to the degree that would convey any sense of overdevelopment. The inspector continued and said, overall, I'm satisfied that the proposal would relate satisfactorily to a character and appearance of a property and wider area. As such, I'm unable to find conflict with the guidance for the rear or side extensions within the Lambeth Design Guide Supplementary Planning Document Part 4, Building Alterations, Extensions and Retrofit SPD, or with Policy Q11 of the Lambeth Local Plan, adopted in 2021, which requires extensions to be subordinate and not unacceptably dominant to the host property. The other matters the inspector went on to state in their report that I have carefully considered the effect of the proposal upon the living conditions of number 31A. The application was made and determined on the basis of an extension to the property as a single family dwelling house. The use of the proposed space would function accordingly. There is no evidence to suggest any noise nuisance would occur, including from any plant or machinery, or that the proposal would cause any issues with regard to drainage or existing services. The extension would be set away from the common side boundary with the attached property. At the time of the visit, there were no trees or bushes of any significance that would be affected by the proposal. Due to the degree of separation and the single-storey scale of the proposed extension, including having regard for its pitched roof form, I am satisfied that it would not impose itself in the outlook of number 31A at either ground or first floor levels, or from the garden as an overly intrusive or overbearing presence. The supplementary planning document applies a 45-degree plan and elevation test for extensions that are perpendicular to the neighbour's windows in order to determine if any further detailed review in terms of impact upon daylight is required. The supplementary planning document advises that the test to fail must be in the reference to consideration of a fail in both plan and elevation. The proposal would pass the test in elevation. There would be no conflict with the Council's guidelines with regard to daylight. The inspector concluded with the recognition that there may be some impact upon late evening sunlight to the rear facing glazed patio doors and side windows and to the garden space immediately adjoining. But the inspector was not persuaded that the effect from this upon the neighbours' overall living and outside spaces would be significant. I note that my findings on this matter reflect those of the Council. I am mindful also of the potential to build a single-storey extension to the appeal property immediately along the boundary with number 31A up to 3 metres in depth as permitted development. For this appeal, an independent planning inspector from the Planning Inspectorate visited the site on the 21st of October, and we're pleased to confirm that the appeal was upheld and the permission granted on the 6th of November in a 4-page appeal decision notice. If you'd like to find out if we can help you with your planning appeal, complete our online form on our website www.planningappealsuk.com, and our new case support team will arrange for a free, no obligation consultation with one of our planning appeal assessment professionals. Thank you for taking the time to watch this planning appeal case study video, and I look forward to producing another one very shortly. Thanks again. Bye.